There it is.
It's awesome. Technology sucks.
Doesn't it though?
Yep.
Welcome to Prostate Cancer, the road to recovery with Jason Stone, a stage 4 fighter. This podcast brings you support and insights from survivors, fighters, and medical experts. Join us for an educational and inspiring journey.
Hey, I'm Jason. I'm 53 years old. I have stage 4 prostate cancer that's metastasized to my spine, and on this channel, we talk about it. Welcome to episode 14 of our podcast series. Today, Adam has joined us. Adam's a 49-year-old veteran who retired from the Navy in 2019 and started his own business in the panhandle of Florida with his wife and 2 kids. On Memorial Day of 2023, he was diagnosed with metastatic castrate-sensitive prostate cancer that spread to his lymph nodes and bones. Thank you for joining us, Adam.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's do a check-in. How are you feeling today?
Today's a good day. Just like anything with any cancer, any illness, you got good days and bad days. But today's pretty good. I actually had the energy to get up and work on my treadmill today. I like to start every day with an exercise to kind of keep the lymphatic system going. And last couple of days, haven't been able to do this last round of chemo has probably been the toughest that I've had. But yeah, to answer your question, doing great. Got to do my routine today, so any day I get to do that is a good day.
How hard are you working out? Is it are you doing like free weights, or are you doing some? You said they have the treadmill, so just some light cardio and what, like body weight exercises, or?
Yeah, I'm limited right now. I tell you, once I had gotten diagnosed, I've always been an active guy, and did CrossFit, and of course I was in the Navy.
Yeah,
of course
they don't let you not be active.
Exactly. Although some people find a way, I don't know.
Yeah.
But so I stayed active, and after diagnosis, because of the spread of the bone, I had some doctor friends telling me not to do weight bearing exercises or even running, just because they were afraid of brittle bones and the bones breaking.
Yeah.
But I've since read and I'm aware more of my situation, that I have no problems doing that. So I was getting back to running, getting back to the weight training, and then I got chemo. So in order to get chemo, I got a port, and the port prevents me from doing a lot of overhead movements.
Yeah.
It prevents me from getting and doing water exercises. It prevents me from, I'm told not to do push-ups. So I'm basically limited to spinning. I've got a Peloton in the weight room. So I do Peloton cycling, and I've got a treadmill. So I do running, running and walking, probably more brisk walking than running. I'll brisk walk. And then if I'm feeling up to it, I'll jog for a couple minutes and then do brisk walk. If I'm really feeling up to it, I'll get off, and I've got a box to do box jumps on, and I'll do box jumps interspersed with sprints.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I tried doing some light free weight exercises when my kids were out here. My son was into it, and so he was kind of keeping me going on that. And then I just kind of fell off and haven't done any exercise, which is probably why I feel a lot more like crap the last couple of weeks, besides being sick, is also I haven't been who was it? Somebody popped in with the comments recently. Oh, I was at the Five Forks. So there's a guy I started following at the Five Forks. He'd done a few episodes of a prostate cancer podcast. He has since said, you know what? I'm not going to keep talking about this. I don't know if that's the mood he did that with, but or the tone he did that with, but he's shifted to a different type of podcast. But he's got some good stuff out there at the Five Forks.
I'll check it out.
He replied to one of my comments saying, hey, even just get out and walk for 30 minutes. So I've mapped out a route, and when we're done here today, I'm going to go walk. I'm going to go walk for 30 minutes. I'm going to walk down to a park, and I'm going to walk back.
Good.
And it's going to suck because I haven't been doing that, but I need to. I know I need to.
Yeah, you got to start. And that's, one of the things I did when I got a second opinion, at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York with a really great doc up there. And the one thing she said is one of the best things you can do is stay active. And there's going to be plenty of mornings, especially on treatment, where you're not going to feel like you want to do anything. but
Yeah.
it's important to get out there and get that lymphatic system moving, get the blood flowing, because it will help you in the long run. And so her words echo in the back of my head every time I have one of those mornings. That said, though, some days you just got to take a break. Just try to make those days try to make those less
Not every day.
days. Yeah, exactly. Than the days you get out there.
Have more get up and go days. How are you doing the bike? I feel like I'm sitting on a mandarin orange all the time. But there's an uncomfortableness down there for me that I can't imagine.
Yeah, it is. I wish I had a picture of the seat to bring into you. But I will tell you, so it's not the seat that the Peloton comes with. It's got the cutout in the middle. So it's it's more like an alien seat pod. From there's a novel series, sci-fi novel series, or I can't remember. But anyway, where they have weird seats like this, where it protects the undercarriage. And so I do that. But I will tell you, I have, mentally, I'm worried about when I do that to the Peloton. I'm out of the seat probably a lot more than I normally would be.
Like when I found out I had cancer, when I started worrying about my symptoms and went to the doctor and said, "Hey, doctor, I'm getting worried about some of these symptoms," was right after I'd gotten back on the bike. And I'm like, did me getting on the bike as I was working out hard? I used to bike. I used to ride bikes a lot. I did a tour around Oahu when I was stationed out there, rode the bike camping along the way. I did a couple 100-miler, century rides and the metric centuries. And I loved it. And I totally forgot what I was saying. Gosh, darn it. I hate
uncomfortable.
Yeah. So no, that didn't help. It was there for a second. You
got back on the bike and you went to the dock.
Oh, yeah. Like, did getting that back on the bike and doing, I was getting on there a couple times a day. Did that like squish stuff out and make it metastasize?
Yeah.
Because my PSA wasn't very high. My PSA was 4.5 in March. And at that point, based on my symptoms, the lower back pain, some other symptoms, I know it had metastasized at that point. How high was your PSA?
So my PSA when I was diagnosed, or when I went to the emergency room on Memorial Day, they took a PSA right before I left. And so I had called the next day to get it. And so I'd gone home and I'd done some research and I saw that 0 to 4 was the normal range. And I called and the woman on the phone said, "Hey, we have your results and it's 575. And so I thought she meant 5.75. That had to be what she meant. No, it was 575.
Holy crap. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, kind of, moving back a little bit. So before I left the Navy in 19, I was starting to have some urological issues. Now, I always had to go and I didn't feel like I was completely voiding. Long story short, I went to the urologist before I retired, and about 6 to 8 months before I retired, and they did a bunch of tests, and they did a PSA test. No one talked to me about the PSA test, so I didn't know about it, but it's in my record, and I looked when they did it, when I went to see the urologist, it was 2.6, which according to the Mayo Clinic is abnormal. Yep. At that point, I was 44.
Yeah, it's elevated.
Yeah, so they did it again 3 months later. Again, I just didn't know what they were doing. Nobody talked about it. It was 2.8. So I showed rise.
You had it then.
Yeah, they put in my record that they told me to do it again in 6 months, or they put in the record to have it done again in 6 months. Again, nobody told me. I retired in 5 months after that. So I had no clue.
Oh, man.
And didn't get a PSA again until 2023. So,
holy crap.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
It does. But, you take these things and it's just like anything. I think one of the big parts of any type of treatment is mental and how you approach it. And so I usually tell that story just anecdotally when I'm trying to let guys know, friends of mine, hey, go get your PSA checked.
Trust your symptoms, right?
Yeah.
You had some of those. keep pushing, make them go in that direction and explain everything to you. Sorry, I interrupted you, but that's
No.
similar. What I took from it is and why I'm doing this is trust your symptoms, make them show you the stuff and look at the numbers. Don't just let them tell you like they told me, oh, it's in the range, you're fine.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, because, it's even funnier because after you're retired and you go through all the VA testing and the VA sends you for additional tests. And I talked about it then, said, hey, still having issues voiding. They gave me 10% disability for the BPH, which ironically, fast forward, once I was trying to make my VA claim, they reduced that BPH disability to 0 now that I have cancer. So, yes, and that's a whole other story. But so so I told the docs when I was getting it tested, hey, I'm still having these issues, and the only thing I did is they put me on Flomax, which didn't really help.
Nope.
And I continued to get worse. The symptoms continued to get worse, and kind of how that buildup went is I started just sitting down primarily to urinate because it was just more comfortable to do that. But then that just became increasingly difficult to do. And then to the point where it was almost like a meditation session every time I would go in. I'd have to sit down, I'd have to breathe deeply, kind of get into a meditative state, imagine waterfalls, and then eventually I'd be able to start and then go. And that was kind of just continuing to get worse. But the point is, when I told the doc, my primary care physician, about that, all they did was say, okay, we'll double the dose of Flomax and see if that helps. It was just, it wasn't until, and so it really wasn't until the time that I was like, hey, I want you to, all these other symptoms started, that I was like, I need to go see a urologist. But by that point, the emergency room doc saying, you need to go see a urologist tomorrow,
Oh, yeah. God dang it. So, yeah, your path, once they said, hey, you need to go get your PSA, your path was a lot shorter than mine because your numbers were much higher and it was more advanced. So what treatment plan did you choose? Because depending on where we're all at, we have different options. And the whole idea is catch it early. Like if you'd have caught it, if not you, if the doctors, if the Navy had caught it back when it started to climb, it would have been surgery and done.
Yeah. Well, surgery or radiation, because, a few months, I think like 6 months prior to my situation, a close family member had prostate cancer, and they had caught it when it was still localized at the prostate, and they had, I don't know how many, but they had several rounds of radiation and they were cured. So they didn't even have the surgery. With me, you talked about options. I really didn't get a lot of options, so to speak. I mean, had I all to do it over again, I probably would have looked for more of a, not a naturopathic is the word that comes to mind, but an integrative oncologist that kind of helps, talks with the patient about what they want to do. But my option or choice is basically what I'm doing, and which is the standard of care for advanced prostate cancer, which is what I have, also called de novo metastatic hormone sensitive prostate cancer.
Yeah.
And so what that includes is androgen deprivation therapy with chemo. And so the androgen deprivation therapy is actually, so they call it a tri-treatment or triple treatment. I take the Erleada, which is an oral pill. It's 4 of the pills I take every day. And that, like I was explaining to you earlier off camera, is what they call that is an antagonist, an androgen antagonist. So it blocks, each one of your cells have got these receptors, and these receptors are targeted by testosterone. The Erleada act as like a fake testosterone or fake key that plug into the receptors so the testosterone doesn't get into them. This helps reduce the spread of the cancer. So that's the first part of the treatment. Then you've got the chemical castration part, which is Degarelix is what I started on. And that's a monthly abdominal injection. That sounds a lot worse than it is. The Degarelix itself, as far as side effects, about 2 to 4 days after, the next day for about 4 days. It's really sensitive in the abdomen where you got the shot. But that tends to go away. But what the Degarelix does is that stops your production of testosterone. That is the chemical castration. And of course, as you know, and I'm sure your listeners know, that is what prostate cancer feeds off of primarily, which is the testosterone. So that's the second part. As a side note, they've switched me from the Degarelix, which is also called Firmagon, to Eligard. And Eligard is a shot you take every 3 months. The only drawback to the Eligard is it's a bigger needle, and it's also an abdominal shot, and it hurts a lot more than the Degarelix does getting in. But it's still not bad.
Does it have to be in the abdomen?
Yeah.
Because the Lupron they put in my upper
Yeah.
hind end, and it's not as painful there.
Yeah, it was. There are some of the medication like Lupron that they do in the rear, but this, for whatever reason, and I don't know the medical reason, but it is an abdominal shot. Every place you read it calls it administered abdominally.
Gotta trust them on that.
Yeah, and that is part of it. You do have to trust, and like I said, I did get second opinions. And then, of course, the third part, that third arm of the treatment is the docetaxel or the Taxotere. Same thing.
That's the chemo.
Yeah, and that's the chemo, and it's 6 rounds, and that's based off of a study that was done in 15 or 16. I'm going to get it wrong. I think it was a Stampede study, but I'm not certain.
Stampede sounds right because that's the plan they were looking at for me at first.
Yeah. So yeah, and that is supposed to do a couple things. It's supposed to knock the cancer down even more, and of course, that really just all the chemo really does is it just kills fast dividing or fast producing cells, which are cancer cells, but there are also other cells like hair follicles or stomach lining, because those are all fast reproducing cells. But the 6 treatments, they've been a Stampede, got it at 6. Some of the earlier treatments on docetaxel, I read guys taking 45 treatments of chemo. I don't know how they could do that because I hate it. I hate the chemo. Yeah, and I'll tell you, I respond to it. I've responded to the chemo much better than some, not as well as others. But it really hasn't been that bad. It's probably more mental than anything else. Well, but yeah.
I don't think so. I think you have talked before about some of the things you're doing. We already talked about the exercise, but there's also a diet change.
Yes.
I get into the prostate cancer support group on Facebook and these different places, and somebody will say, "Hey, what should I just found out I've got prostate cancer. What should I be eating?" And half of the group will get in there and say, "Whatever you want, it doesn't matter." Like, I've tried that. In fact, the last couple of weeks, I feel like crap, and it's not good. And then I've tried the shift my diet, try and do plant-based, try and do like you had pointed out, try and reduce the glutens, or in your case, I think you said you went gluten-free.
Yeah,
which reduces those the histamine response. Do I have that right?
Yeah, and anti-inflammatories.
Yeah, and so there is a piece to that, and you're maintaining a positive attitude. You've got your own podcast you're doing. Anything is possible.
Yeah.
And so that's an outlet. Anytime we can talk like this and share this information, that helps us emotionally, mentally. So that's that internal part, the exercise you talked about, and then the diet. I don't know what else you could do. You're hitting the top. You're hitting everything you're supposed to do on every part of it.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's funny you talk about the some people just say, "Hey, go do anything you want to do," and like I have medical friends or doctors, who are actual not oncologists, but they are medical doctors who are saying, "Hey, just eat whatever you want. Just, do whatever you want to do." And I'm like, so number one, exactly, especially being, prior military guys, we're control freaks, to a certain extent. And, I need to be able to feel like I've got control over something and that I'm doing something. I can't sit around and do nothing. As a matter of fact, like when I'm making the phone calls, when I was diagnosed and we finally, figured out how bad it really was, I called up one of my former commanding officers, who I was the XO for, actually in Whidbey Island, and
Nice.
and I let him know. And his first question is, all right, what can I do? Because we want to be able to do something. We want to be able to contribute.
Yep.
And that's how I feel about the diet. And I really do feel, and I tell people, I felt the best that I had felt in a long time after diagnosis, once I had changed the diet to a plant-based diet, and I had, and the exercise, and of course the medical, like you're going to say. So to me, there's two sides of the coin of what, what the treatment plan is. There's the medical side, what your doctors will tell you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
of course, you research that. And then of course there's the lifestyle. And
Yep.
and you mentioned it, positive mind, your mental aspect, and then your health, your exercise aspect, and then the diet.
And
And
actually,
so
there's a fourth. There's a spiritual piece to that for most people too.
yes, and as a matter of fact, I had that written down. You'd send me the thing, and I had prayer as one. Yeah, I'm not an overly religious person, but prayer for me has just been something that is always. It's almost kind of like a meditation. It has always helped me center and calm, and kind of like when things, especially when things are rough, just
Yep.
kind of get back and get back a little piece of myself there.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's so you get a little too close to the edge and you start looking over the edge and you're like, all right, I'm scared. You move back to wait a little bit. That's kind of been my experience with the spiritual side of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's helped, and what really helps too is I've got a lot of friends who are very spiritual, and and they pray for me, and I find that comforting as well.
Yeah.
That's that community part.
And in the community, go back to like your CO checking in, right? What can I do to help? The number of shipmates that have reached out since finding out has been just amazing. I've done FaceTimes and Zoom calls and Facebook Messenger FaceTime, whatever's with so many people. Jerry Alex, Ron Newberry, Brian Truckenmiller, Chris Peterson, all these guys out there just checking in. Sean Spillum, Zach was out here, so a lot of FaceTime. So many sailors are like, "Hey, what can I do? What do you need from me?" And that's how they approach it.
Yeah.
I love that. That helps. That helps so much.
And I think that's one thing that you and I have, especially being prior military, that it's a community, and it really is. There are people that some of you would expect, of course, and some you just never would have, because the same things happened to me with all my former shipmates coming out and checking up on me, and they'll check up, and then you think, okay, hey, I got the initial text, they found out I had cancer, or the call or whatever, and that might be the only thing I hear, and then a month later I'm getting a call again or something, and
Yep.
these, because they care, because we're a family. There's stuff that we experienced, serving our country, that nobody else can relate to, and
Nope.
those friendships, it's family. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And you were a surface ship?
Yeah. So I was a
Target sailor?
yeah. I'll tell you, I was a target, for you. But yeah, I started out as a surface warfare guy, and I was a surface warfare guy for probably 8 of the best Navy years of my life, and then and some of the worst. And then I actually transferred, and I was an intel officer for the last 12, which had great years there too. But all in the Pacific. But
Oh,
yeah.
right on.
Yeah.
You're ever stationed out in Hawaii?
Yeah, I was stationed. I was with PACOM. My first intel tour was out at PACOM.
Nice. I was out there 1999 to 2009.
Okay, I was in Japan for 1999 to 2001.
All right.
So about the closest. I was in Hawaii 7 to 10. So we probably were there at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Yeah.
Small world. Wouldn't
It
want
is.
to paint it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right. Well, how have your symptoms? So we have cancer symptoms, and then we have treatment symptoms,
Yeah.
right? So you're dealing with double dose of symptoms, and that impacts us on a daily basis, right? Like I feel like I'm sitting on a mandarin orange all the time, and it gets uncomfortable. I have to get up, I have to walk around. The brain fog, I'm dealing with that at work still. I'm my ability to concentrate, and it's a daily roller coaster. It changes every single day. So you said, and I can imagine when you're coming off of chemo, you get your treatment done, you're going to have a real low, and then it slowly comes back up. But
Yes.
you still have those daily ripples in there. How has all this affected your daily life, your schedule, and like, are you working now? You mentioned you have a home business, or not a home business, but a business.
Yep. Yeah, so I own a business. It's a screening business. It's actually a franchise. It's a Screenmobile franchise that I own here in the Panhandle. And thank goodness for that. And thank goodness I've got a staff, Mike Harmon and the other crew and leads, Ty Touchstone, that because they're professionals and they can get the job done. The business almost runs itself to allow me the time to heal.
That's awesome.
For lack of a better word. But yeah, because when I get, like, for example, when I get the now tri-monthly shots of the Eligard, it wipes me out that day. It's, the symptoms, the side effects aren't that much from the Eligard, but the day that I get it, it just takes everything out of me. I'm sleeping for most of the day after that.
Yep.
Sleeping with ice packs on my stomach. But yeah, otherwise, the chemo brain, in this case, the brain fog is a real thing. Just as an example, I have forgotten to sign 3 checks that I've sent out in the last, 2 months. Forgetting to sign checks is not something that I've ever done before in my life. It's hard to think of words that I'm looking for that before I wouldn't have had an issue to remember. It's difficult sometimes, just to the fatigue. I get tired so much more quickly than I used to. Vision, the chemo affects the vision where, especially out of my right eye, that I can't, I've never needed glasses. I got prescribed glasses right before I got out of the Navy. And I use them now because of how the chemo affects my eyesight. But the good news is a lot of this stuff is all supposed to come back.
Yeah. So I was wondering, like, how much of this is permanent?
Hardly any of it is supposed to be permanent. The brain fog you're supposed to recover from, especially because my chemo, in the case of my chemo, it's only 6 rounds. So the majority of the stuff, I'm told, you do get back. I don't think probably you get back to 100%, but I think maybe 90, 95. And in some cases, I think 100% too. But,
well, how long? So with ADT, you said you're on a little bit different drugs than I am, because I do Zytiga daily, 4,000 milligrams of Zytiga every day, and you have to make sure anybody that's on that, make sure you're on taking prednisone with it, because I wasn't at first, and that was miserable. Oh, so Zytiga with prednisone. That's how I'm going to start saying that from now on. And then I do every 3-month Lupron shot. And that sounds like, so initially they told me, hey, yeah, you're going to be on this for life. And then they moved me from that doctor to level up. Now you're talking to this doctor. And they're like, well, we're going to probably a couple of years. And then we do some more scans. We haven't started yet. And when I finally get going, they're like, well, you're going to be on this for at least a year. I'm like, why does this target keep changing? I don't like moving targets. You told me, just tell me.
Well, I think part of, and obviously I'm not a doctor, but I think part of the reason, and you're exactly right, the target keeps moving is because of the advancements and the new things and new studies that they find out, number one, as far as different treatment options. Number two, you have got different doctors. And like, for example, in the Panhandle of Florida where I'm at, the sample size that the oncologists see down here is not that high. So, my urologist is saying, man, you are a rare case, you're very unique. I don't see a lot of, especially, a young guy, younger than 50, coming in with advanced prostate cancer.
Yeah.
I go to New York and I see my doctor up there at MSK, and she's like, you're a dime a dozen. I see guys like you every day. And, I keep guys alive, for 20, something years, no problem, with guys like you. Whereas, I had urologists down here saying, hey, the treatments these days can keep you alive for 10 years, or more.
Right.
Um,
How long do I have, Doc?
yeah.
5.
Well,
I've
and I've
what?
never, and
4.
you mentioned it, and that's a good point too. And I do want to say, never have I had a doctor tell me a certain amount of time. And I think
Good.
any doctor that tells you, hey, you've got this long, that's your first sign and your only sign to go find a different doc.
Yep.
Because you never know. Everybody's different, number one. Number two, you could die on your way home from that doctor's appointment getting hit by a bus.
Yep.
Nobody knows. You've got people who've beat this thing, people who've beat advanced, not a ton, but more and more each day, but so that's why, but to answer your question where you were getting at, I think, and nobody's really said that, no doc has said, but the future for me could comprise of a couple of different things. Like you, the way I understand it is they probably will keep me on the ADT therapy, and you're on just your drugs are different names, but they do the same thing as the drugs that I'm on.
Yep.
With the exception, obviously, the chemo, but the way that I understand is, for me, I am getting myself prepared to be on ADT for 2 years.
Okay.
And then after that, possibly look at a holiday where they take you off, and then they try to wait to see if your PSA rises. And then if it does, how fast is it rising? What's the doubling rate? And then at that point, hey, where are we comfortable? Does it plateau at like 3 and then it just kind of stays there? Well, I've read some guys who've been off treatment, and then as soon as it goes to point, 8, they get back on ADT. And sometimes it's a comfort level for the patient as well.
Well, and it depends on whether they had surgery or not. That
Right.
changes what level is the level of concern.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. And like for me, somebody who I still have all my parts and I haven't had surgery, maybe that's going to be a lower threshold. Maybe it won't be. I don't know the specifics of that. I know one thing that we're looking at potentially, because I've also seen a radiological oncologist, is depending on what my scans show, kind of like what you alluded to. The scans have been good so far. It really looks like, initially I was classified as high volume because I had, one in the clavicle, some lymph nodes in the chest, the T8 vertebrae, the pelvis, and of course lymph nodes in the pelvis. My understanding from the scans are since I've been on treatment, it has localized itself back. The bone mets are healing or have healed. It's gone from here, and I just have maybe 1 or 2 lymph nodes that are a little abnormal, but we're talking millimeters, so we're talking still very small. Yeah, so
That's awesome.
yeah, so still really good. And then if it continues to do that, the radiological oncologist has talked about then maybe radiating the prostate, because they're still obviously in the prostate.
Yep.
And then, he's actually mentioned the C word, not cancer, but cure, as some possibilities there. Of course, I don't get my hopes up for anything, as I don't think any cancer patient should. But that's an option, again, depending on what the things say. Then, of course, with guys like us, there comes the question of what happens once your cancer becomes castration resistant. Yep. And of course, there's a whole. It seems to me with the studies is there's a whole lot more options for you once your cancer becomes resistant than there is, before, when it's just sensitive, hormone sensitive like it is.
Well, there's a couple new treatments that have been approved just this year. I'm going to murder the name of this. Lutetium.
Lutetium.
Thank you. 177. So that's a gamma emitter. And so when we do our PSMA PET scans, they inject us, like when they did mine with fluorine 18. So fluorine 18 uptakes into the cancer cells. Yep. And what they do is they attach this LT-177 to something that uptakes into the cells. And so it seeks out the cancer cells, attaches to the PSMA, whatever, the thing on the outside of the cancer. Yeah. It attaches to that and then just gamma emits.
And kills it.
Now, gamma, has a longer half-life, and it's more penetrating radiation. So it's also damaging the surrounding cells, which is why, and I didn't write this down. There's another one that's coming out or came out. I posted a link to this article on my Facebook page. It's a beta emitter, or sorry, not, I keep saying beta. It's an alpha emitter. Or no, this one is a beta emitter, but there's also a new one coming out that's an alpha emitter.
Yeah.
So they're looking there. This LT-177 is working so well. They're like, well, what if we do this? And so a beta emitter is less penetrating, right? It's not going to travel as far. It's more your skin cells have more of a shielding effect. So it's going to just affect the cancer. And then the alpha, that's going to be beautiful. That will almost be like a cancer cure.
Yeah, exactly. And like to your point, because the results from the trials of that, there's a vision trial and there's another trial more for the lutetium initially. But because the results have been so good for late stage cancer patients, because that's what it's approved for, they're now doing trials for early stage. So for a first standard of care treatment. So instead of getting ADT like you and I have, to where we're like, because it's not fun being on ADT. It's a lot better than a lot of things, but your side effects with that type of treatment are a lot less.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, maybe it's curative instead of palliative. Only studies, will take time. But yeah, I'm excited about that as well. One thing that I did learn too is, any drug that's been approved by the FDA is approved for prescription. So even though, for example, lutetium is approved, and the study that got it approved was for late stage cancer patients, my understanding is you could be prescribed it at any time.
Yeah, that's what they're allowed to do. Like, if my radiation oncologist, if I walked in there today, he could say, you know what, let's try this. Or you open to this. And he could just prescribe me LT-177. And one of the guys that commented on one of my videos, I wish I could remember the name, is doing that. Like, this is his first front treatment. I got to dig through the comments and find that again. And his symptoms are mild, because so one of the drugs, I forget whether it's Lupron or Zytiga, hits the pituitary gland and prevents the signals that go out to create testosterone.
Chemical castration, yeah.
And then the other one's the blocker, right? Yep. And so he doesn't have any of that. So there's no castration involved.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to get cured of cancer and not be castrated? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, the thing too with the unfortunately with the new treatment, which hopefully by the time they work all this stuff out, is I know there's some supply chain issues too with the with getting it to be widely available. But that's just one of the treatments, because of course the radiological oncologist also said, hey, if this stuff doesn't work, once my cancer becomes resistant,
yep.
He would say my next step would be Provenge, which is an immunotherapy. And so basically with Provenge, and there was a guy, and I can't remember his name, but one of the first articles I read after being diagnosed was a Men's Health article from a couple of years ago, with this guy who'd been alive for 13 years with advanced prostate cancer. And he attributed it to, and it's in Washington actually, to Provenge. And Provenge is an immunotherapy where they take your own blood cells and they genetically engineer them, put them back into your system to fight specifically the cancer. And there's been a lot of really good results from the Provenge. Now with the Provenge, I think this guy, and this guy's an outlier, but I think he is now on the ADT when he wasn't on the ADT before. So I don't know, because if you're castration resistant and you do the Provenge, I would think you wouldn't go back on the ADT, but I don't know.
And we don't know, like we've talked about already, we don't know what else he was doing. Like, is he, doing a bunch of dairy and
Yeah, well, actually, he was not eating. Like, this was a hard living guy, and
Oh,
like he's got a blog that I checked up on after I'd read it because it was an older article. I wanted to see if he was still alive, and he is. But he's talking about he's still getting drunk. He's still hitting the bottle. He's
your
still eating.
liver, your liver has such a huge part of your recovery, of your
Yes.
body's ability to heal. Why would you? I don't know. I don't get it anymore.
Yeah. I don't either. And kind of like I think you and I probably have very similar views on the whole diet thing because I will tell people I'm plant based, but there are a couple. There's two things that I don't do. I don't do dairy, and I
Yep.
don't do processed sugar. Those are the two things I don't do. I haven't drank anything, so I don't do alcohol either. But like I'm plant based, but I will eat red meat as long as it's lean red meat cooked the right way, and that's based off of the doc at MSK. I'll eat about once a month, and then I eat fish, and I'll eat fish about once or twice a week. But outside of that, I'm primarily plant based
That's
and gluten free.
Yeah, that's good. I wish I'm not holding to. I have the same views. That doesn't mean I'm following them as well as I should. Like I ate pizza two days this week already with cheese and everything, and that's not. I know that's not good. And I was like, this is so bad for me.
I'll tell you, you in Washington State, you've got to have some good vegan restaurants up there because I've had some great. Actually, my wife with chickpea crusts or chickpea crust, in my opinion, is better than cauliflower crust. But
Huh.
she's made me some really good pizzas that are vegan.
Oh,
With
that'd be awesome.
so I mean, but yeah, and if you really want, I think the vegan mecca is New York. When we were up there at MSK, holy moly, the vegan restaurants that were up there. I mean, I was eating like a king. Like, there's like city blocks of nothing but vegan restaurants, and so I
Yeah,
mean, Indian vegan, Italian vegan, or plant based is probably the better way to put it. But I mean, stuff and it tasted good.
nice.
But
Yeah, I
yeah,
think if I was over on the west side more, I'd see more of that. But
yeah, your
I'm
Tri
right
Cities.
down here in South Central Washington, in the middle of nowhere, Tri Cities. It's just
Yeah, it's different.
sagebrush and Applebee's.
Yeah,
There's a few good restaurants,
yeah, no, I
but yeah,
understand.
it's not the same. I need to do better about my diet. I need to get out. I need to, like I said, I need to do the walking, and I'm going to do that today.
Do it.
I might even record a little walking video. I don't know. I don't know if I'll have the breath to talk and walk.
Well, I will tell you. I mean, I do it because I will tell you, Jason, that your videos they help me, and so I thank you for doing them. And they are inspirational, and it's comforting, really, more than anything. To just because you were talking about my it's more YouTube than a podcast. I haven't converted them to podcasts yet. I haven't figured that out. But I say in that very first YouTube video I did, I am doing those almost selfishly because of those reasons you talk about. It
Yep.
helps me. It helps get my mind right, and it's just an easier way too for me to keep, because I'm from Louisiana. I got a big family, and it's easier to do a YouTube to keep everybody informed than it is to to pick up a phone 50 times and tell everybody what's going on. That said, I still hope mine are able to help other people like in our situation. But
Yeah,
but
they
yeah,
do. And yep, they do. And thank you. I appreciate that.
anyway,
Well, we're getting up on some time here.
yeah,
So overall, all this, we've talked about some great stuff. We talked about the diet and the differences in the treatment plans and what does the future look like. What is, if you could boil down a message, because like when I first got diagnosed, I was in shock, and then I started going. You go through the denial, and then whatever. I
yeah,
don't remember the
5 stages. Yeah,
stages. Yeah, the blame, and I was like, why didn't somebody tell me before this? How come? Why finger pointing? And it's like, I wish there was a book somebody would hand every male when they turn 40 and say, here, start. There's a first checkbox every year. Get this test. Here's why.
yeah.
And so sorry, I started rambling. What's the one message you want to share with others?
Yeah, no, and thank you for asking me. And again, and thanks for having me again. I would say my message is probably three things.
Okay.
One, there's hope. One of the first things the doctor at MSK told me is, you don't want cancer, but if there's a type of cancer to have, this is the kind of cancer you want, and this is the time in our history that you will have wanted to have it. So there is hope, based off the things that we talked about. The second thing, be grateful. One of the things cancer has allowed me, and I don't know if you would agree with it, is its perspective. Cancer patients have a perspective that people that don't have cancer cannot begin to comprehend. The way that we are able to look at things, because of the way that people look at us, because we have cancer, that, oh my goodness, you're going to die. Well, no, everybody's going to die. Everybody's got
the
this
bicycle seat differently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, because I mean, like we all have this sword of Damocles hanging over every single one of us. But for whatever reason, because you got cancer, it looks at things differently, and so it's maybe so much more grateful for things in a way that that people that don't have cancer cannot understand. And I don't feel sorry about that, but so just be grateful. And then, of course, the last thing, anything is truly possible. And so that's really those three things. There's hope, be grateful, and anything is possible.
That's a beautiful message. I love that. I like that as your podcast. Yeah. Or video vlog.
It'll be a podcast one day. Who knows?
Eventually to be a podcast, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time. Thanks for this conversation. It's a pleasure to meet you face to face ish.
Yes, no,
Right,
definitely. Yeah, and I have the conversation. Great conversation.
Yeah, this was awesome. This was very, very awesome. All right, for the viewers, if you like this video, please take a moment to like and subscribe. I appreciate the support. Take care. Love you all.